Hi guys, sorry to interrupt your viewing, but please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.
It started like most family dinners do when everyone's pretending things are fine even though there are not too many overlapping conversations, fake laughter echoing off the walls, the clinking of mismatched wine glasses, trying to mask the tension, hanging in the air like thick cigarette smoke. My mother, Catherine, sat at the head of the table like she was royalty, her silver hair curled into that perfect grandma at church style, pearls around her neck, lips painted in that same damn coral shade she wore since the 80s. She loved attention, like most people love oxygen, and tonight, she had plenty of it. The dining room smelled like burnt garlic bread and overcooked lasagna, Kayla's attempt at doing something special for Mom. I didn't say a word about the chewy noodles or the marinara that tasted suspiciously like store-brand sauce, because what would be the point? Nobody noticed when I made things perfect. They only noticed when Kayla showed up late with mascara smudged under her eyes and a new story about how her next business idea was going to blow up. Like, seriously, this one's it. Kayla always got the benefit of the doubt. She could have walked in with a raccoon on a leash, and our mother would have called it quirky. Me? If I raised my voice half a decibel too high, I was moody or too serious, or that old favorite, just like your father. I had spent 2 full days prepping the house, cleaning out the gutters, polishing the hardwood, arranging the old dusty photo albums on the coffee table because I knew Mom would bring them up. It was my house, after all. Not that she ever said thank you. Not once. She's lived here for 7 years, rent-free, and you'd think she was the one doing me a favor. Dinner started with the usual small talk. My cousin Sam bragging about his new boat. And Carol complaining about how Netflix was just too confusing. Kayla laughing too loudly, tossing her hair, acting like she didn't just ghost our mother for 6 straight months before tonight. And our mother? She soaked it all in like it was a warm bath drawn just for her. I picked at my food, not because I wasn't hungry, but because something told me tonight would leave a bad taste no matter what. The moment came halfway through dessert. A half-collapsed lemon cake Kayla baked from a boxed mix, but somehow got credit for being thoughtful. Mom stood up, glass of wine in her hand, that fake sparkle in her eye that always meant something real nasty was about to come wrapped in a smile. She raised her glass and said, "To family. And to the daughter who's always been my light, my joy, my reason to smile." There was a pause. A long one. And then she looked directly at Kayla, as if I weren't even there. Everyone turned their heads. Even the dog looked confused. Kayla smiled that smug little smile like she just won something. And I felt my stomach twist, not with anger, not even with sadness. Just clarity. A kind of quiet, sharp clarity that cut through all the years I had spent trying to earn something that was never going to be handed to me. I didn't stand up right away. I waited. I let the words hang there, let them marinate in the air a little. Then, as the polite clapping died down and people started reaching for their coffee cups again, I stood. Slow and calm, like I was just going to the kitchen for more ice. I opened my purse, pulled out the white envelope, and walked over to my mother's side. She looked up at me, still holding her wine glass, clearly annoyed that I was interrupting her moment. I leaned down, placed the envelope gently beside her plate, and said in a voice quiet enough that only those closest heard, "I hope she enjoys her last night here." She blinked. Kayla laughed, thinking I was joking. Mom's eyes narrowed like she suddenly remembered I wasn't the funny one. I turned around and sat back in my seat, folding my hands in my lap. Nobody moved. Not at first. Then Uncle Jerry let out a nervous cough, and someone dropped a fork. I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. I'd said everything I needed to say. The envelope sat there like a lit fuse, just waiting for someone to open it. And in that moment, for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the forgotten daughter. I felt like the one in control. I didn't always hate that house. Not really. Not in the beginning when I was young enough to believe it could still be a home and not a monument to everything unspoken and unfair that would one day spill into a dinner like blood through gauze. I used to walk through those narrow hallways, touching the faded wallpaper with my fingertips, pretending each dent and scratch was just a part of our story, not a scar that someone forgot to fix. The place creaked in winter and sweated in summer, but to a kid like me, quiet, observant, overlooked, it was a shell I tried to fill with meaning. My dad built the porch with his own hands, or at least he claimed to. I remember him holding a hammer in one hand and a beer in the other, telling me, one day, you'll appreciate what hard work looks like. I think he meant it. He wasn't a kind man, not in the obvious ways, but he had a code: work hard, pay your dues, keep your mouth shut. I tried to follow it, even long after he was gone. Maybe that's why I stepped in when the bank notices started arriving, threatening foreclosure like a wolf at the door. Dad had only been dead for 9 months when it all started falling apart. His pension dried up faster than anyone expected, and Mom acted like nothing was happening, like some miracle would save the house just because she wanted it to. Kayla had already taken off to Florida with some guy named Bryce or Blake or something with a B, her third boyfriend that year, the kind of guy who wore backwards hats indoors and called himself an entrepreneur while living off her tips from bartending. I still remember the day I realized she wasn't coming back. I was standing in the kitchen, holding an unpaid utility bill, while Mom was humming and folding towels like the electricity wasn't about to get shut off. I was 22 when I bought this place. Well, 21. Wait, no, 24. Whatever. I was young. Too young to be dealing with a mortgage, a grieving mother, and a sister who treated family like a hotel she could check in and out of. I used what Dad left me, his life insurance, which wasn't much, and added every penny I had from the job I hated at the time, working 60 hours a week in a medical billing office where people treated me like I was invisible, just like home. When I signed those papers and took over the deed, Mom didn't cry, didn't hug me, didn't even look me in the eye. She just said, "Well, it's the least you could do, considering everything I gave up for you girls." I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask what exactly she thought she'd given up, because from where I stood, all I remembered was being the one to fix the clogged sink, pay for groceries when her debit card declined, pick up Kayla from jail that one time, and pretend like nothing happened. Over the years, I became the ghost landlord of that house, quietly keeping the heat running, the lights on, the pipes from freezing, while Mom played queen and Kayla drifted in and out like a storm you can't predict, but always know will leave something broken in its wake. Kayla had a gift. I'll give her that. She could disappear for 6 months, show up with a bruised wrist and some story about being screwed over, and suddenly she was the one getting tucked in with a warm meal and Mom's undivided sympathy. There was one winter where she stayed for almost 3 weeks. Every day, she slept until noon, ate whatever I stocked the fridge with, then stole pills from Mom's bathroom drawer like she was picking mints at a restaurant. I said nothing, not because I didn't care, but because I knew that saying something would make me the problem. That's how it always worked. Kayla caused the fire, and I got blamed for noticing the smoke. And still, through all of that, I kept the house going. I shoveled snow in boots with holes in them. I mowed the lawn in 100-degree heat. I painted the siding myself one summer when Kayla was off at some rehab center Mom refused to talk about, and not once did I hear the words, "Thank you." Instead, Mom would look around and sigh like the house had fixed itself with the sheer power of her disappointment. I kept telling myself that maybe someday, if I worked hard enough, if I stayed long enough, if I stayed good enough, she'd finally say she was proud of me. That she'd stop comparing every breath I took to Kayla's chaos and finally see me for who I was. But that moment never came. Then last month, I found her phone unlocked on the coffee table. It buzzed while I was setting her medicine in the little plastic organizer like I did every Saturday morning. I don't know why I looked. Maybe I was just tired. Or maybe I knew something was waiting for me. The voicemail was from earlier that week. She must have meant to delete it. Her voice, calm and casual, speaking to a friend I didn't recognize. She said, Lena was always difficult. Cold. Too much like her father. Kayla's the one I connect with. She's my only real daughter. I didn't cry. Not right then. I just sat on the edge of the couch and listened to it twice. Then I quietly stood up, left her meds on the table, and walked out into the cold with my jacket unzipped and my hands shaking. I knew what I had to do. And I knew exactly how long I'd waited to do it. I sat in the car longer than I meant to, parked in the grocery store lot with the windows rolled up and the engine idling low like a heartbeat under my feet, my phone still in my hand, screen glowing with the voicemail app open. Her voice still playing in my head even though I'd already listened to it 3 times. There was something about the way she said it, so casual, so matter-of-fact, like she was reading off a grocery list or reciting a weather forecast. Lena was always cold. Always like her father. I never connected with her. Kayla had my heart. She didn't even pause between the sentences, didn't hesitate or soften it with a nervous laugh or a whisper. She just said it. Like it was truth. Like it was something she had believed for so long, it didn't even feel cruel anymore. Just factual. My fingers were tight around the steering wheel, skin white at the knuckles, and I could feel the heat rising behind my eyes before I even realized I was crying. It wasn't loud, it wasn't some movie scene breakdown with sobs and screams. It was quiet, pathetic almost, just tears running down my face and my jaw clenched like I was trying to bite back years of silence all at once. I started laughing, the kind of bitter laugh that feels like a cough and a scream had a baby, and I wiped my face with the sleeve of my jacket like it mattered, like anyone was watching. Because of course she never connected with me. Of course I was too much like Dad, too serious, too logical, too careful. I was the kid who packed her own lunches starting in the 2nd grade because Mom forgot or maybe just didn't bother. I was the one who taught myself how to shave my legs in the dark with a plastic razor I stole from a friend's house because nobody ever thought to show me. I was the one who kept quiet when Kayla broke things, when Kayla ran away, when Kayla stole $20 from Mom's purse and then had the audacity to blame me, and Mom believed her. Every time. And the thing is, I didn't even want to be her favorite. Not really. I just wanted to matter. I wanted to be seen, to be heard, to be treated like something other than the insurance policy that kept the roof over her head and the heat running in the winter. I wanted her to call me by my name without it sounding like a chore. I wanted her to tell someone, just once, that she was proud of me. That I had done something right. That I had made her life better, even in the smallest way. But no, Kayla was the heart. I was just the hands. The fixer. The filler. The one who kept everything from falling apart and got none of the credit when it didn't. I didn't drive home right away. I sat there and thought about everything, the house, the years of silent sacrifice, the birthday toast that felt like a slap disguised as a compliment for someone else. I thought about the time Kayla crashed Mom's car and left the scene, and how I was the one who took the bus to the impound lot and paid the fee to get it back. I thought about all the Thanksgiving dinners I made from scratch, while Kayla showed up 2 hours late with a store-bought pie and still got called so thoughtful. I scrolled through my contacts with my thumb shaking slightly, and when I landed on Michael Kramer, attorney, I didn't hesitate. I tapped it. He picked up on the 2nd ring with his usual dry voice, and I told him, it's time. I want to file the notice. No delays. I want it official. There was a pause on the other end, like he was waiting to see if I'd change my mind. Are you sure, Lena? He asked, and I could tell he already knew the answer. I've never been more sure, I said. She has until the 1st to get out. He didn't say much after that, just told me he'd send the paperwork the next day and reminded me of the process. But none of that mattered. The only thing that mattered was that for once, I wasn't going to swallow it. I wasn't going to smile through another dinner while being erased in real time. I was done. I sat back in the driver's seat and looked at myself in the rearview mirror. My eyes were red and I looked tired, so damn tired, but there was something else too. A calmness. Like I'd stepped out of a cage I didn't even know I'd been in my whole life. The kind of freedom that doesn't feel good right away because it means you finally accepted the truth you'd been fighting your whole life. She never picked me. She never would have. I could have saved her from a burning building, and she still would have looked past me to see if Kayla was okay. But now? Now she'd have to see me. Now she'd have to face the daughter she ignored while living in the house she thought was hers by divine right. Now she'd have to ask the one she always dismissed to show her mercy, and I wasn't sure I had any left to give. And that's the thing about the quiet ones, the ones who go unnoticed. We're the ones who know where the wires are buried. We're the ones who built the scaffolding they stood on while acting like we didn't exist. And when we finally walk away, the whole damn thing comes down. And it was coming down. There's something about family dinners that makes people wear masks they forgot they even had, like slipping into a costume from a play you didn't audition for but got cast in anyway just because of your last name. The dining room was too warm, like always, the smell of artificial citrus air freshener mixing with burnt garlic and sugary Moscato wine. The lights too bright over that chipped mahogany table Mom refused to replace, not because of sentimental value, but because she liked reminding people that real wood lasts longer than the people who sit around it. I'd heard that line since I was a teenager, and it never once landed with the kind of wisdom she thought it carried. The guests were a haphazard collage of family, distant cousins with passive-aggressive smiles, friends of friends who barely knew Catherine but liked a free meal, and neighbors who smelled opportunity anytime an invitation mentioned wine and homemade cake. Kayla, of course, had already finished her third mimosa by the time the appetizers were cleared, and she was in full storytelling mode, arms waving, voice raised just enough to cut through everyone else's conversation, spinning some over-polished fantasy about her new business venture that would revolutionize online coaching. No one asked what the business was, or how she was funding it, or whether it was even legal. They just clapped politely like background extras in a movie about delusion. Catherine beamed at her the way some mothers look at their kids during school plays, even when they forget their lines and knock over a prop. It wasn't just pride, it was something deeper, almost like vindication, as if Kayla being loud and pretty and the center of attention somehow justified every cruel comment she'd ever lobbed at me over the years. I watched the whole performance in silence, sitting at the far end of the table with my napkin neatly folded on my lap, pretending the wine wasn't sour and the lasagna didn't taste like sadness layered with cheese. Kayla was dressed like she always was, boho chic on a budget, big earrings that probably cost too much for someone who hadn't paid rent in months, a blouse that dipped too low for a family dinner. And those fake lashes she insisted were real even though everyone could see the glue. She was laughing too hard at her own jokes, throwing her head back like a movie star, sipping from her glass like the room was her stage, and we were lucky to be seated for the show. And Catherine? She looked at her like she was watching a sunrise. Like nothing could go wrong as long as Kayla was glowing. I must have faded into the wallpaper again, because no one even noticed I hadn't spoken in 20 minutes. That's how it always was. I could set myself on fire, and they'd ask if the lighting felt cozy. But I stayed quiet because I already knew how the night would end. I already had the envelope in my purse. I already made peace with the moment that would burn the bridge for good. And then Catherine stood up, glass of wine in her hand, steady and full even though her legs wobbled slightly. She tapped the side of the glass with a butter knife, the polite ding-ding that signaled everyone to hush like we were in church. Her smile was wide and rehearsed, her voice as smooth as ever when she said, "Tonight, I just want to say how grateful I am for everyone who came, and for my beautiful girls. But let's be honest, only one of my daughters ever gave me a reason to smile." Her eyes found Kayla across the table like magnets finding north. There was laughter, awkward and forced, like people didn't quite know whether to smile or brace for impact. Kayla raised her glass like it was a trophy. Someone muttered, "Cheers to that," and Catherine drank, proud of her little performance. The attention hung in the air like confetti that hadn't landed yet. I stood slowly. Not dramatic. Not angry. Just calm. I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope, thick with paperwork, stamped and sealed. My footsteps were the only sound in the room as I walked toward her, heels soft against the old wood floor. I placed the envelope gently beside her plate, between the half-eaten slice of cake and the wine glass that still sparkled like her delusions. Good thing she's the one who owns your house now, I said, voice level, not a tremor in it. And I walked back to my seat. The room froze. A fork clinked against a plate, then silence. Kayla let out a high-pitched laugh, that same laugh she used when she got pulled over in high school and tried to flirt her way out of a ticket. Okay, wow, she said. What is this, a joke? Is this a birthday prank or something? Catherine didn't answer. She opened the envelope with her perfectly manicured fingers, and as she began to read, her face drained of color like someone had pulled the curtain on her performance mid-scene. Her mouth twitched, and her hands started shaking before she got halfway through the first page. Her voice broke like glass as she said, "You can't be serious. You can't do this." "I can," I said, still seated, still calm. "And I did. I own this house, remember? The one you've been living in for free while calling me a stranger in front of everyone who'd listen." "You ungrateful little snake," she hissed, slamming the papers down like they were dirty. "I gave you everything. I raised you." You gave Kayla everything," I said, cutting her off with a tone sharp enough to draw blood. "You raised me like a burden. And now your favorite can figure out how to pay your rent." Everyone stared at Kayla, who had suddenly gone quiet, her glass frozen halfway to her lips. She opened her mouth like she wanted to speak, but no sound came out. Catherine turned to her with desperate eyes. "Kayla, tell her. Tell her you'll help. You'll cover it, right? You've got your business, your big plans." "I can't," Kayla blurted, voice cracking like thin ice. "I'm getting evicted too." And just like that, the room collapsed into silence again. But this time it was different. This time it wasn't awkward, it was terrifying. Catherine's face twisted into something between disbelief and rage, like the floor had vanished under her heels. And for the first time in my life, I watched her truly see the daughter she'd ignored, and the one she'd adored, without the lens of denial clouding her eyes. And it was only just beginning. The silence that followed Kayla's outburst was thick and suffocating, like someone had opened a window and let in a winter wind that froze every single breath midair. For a moment, no one knew where to look or what to say, as if the gravity of her confession had pulled the entire room sideways, and everyone was just trying not to fall. Catherine's face, once so flushed with self-satisfaction and performative grace, had turned pale and tight, her eyes darting between us like she was trying to do the math and realizing all the numbers were fake. Her precious daughter, her golden child, the one she had crowned with blind affection for decades, had been lying the entire time, hiding behind charm and chaos while the real burden of care and sacrifice was shouldered by the daughter she barely acknowledged. "I'm sorry," Kayla said, though it didn't sound like she meant it in any real way. She looked like a kid caught with her hand in a cookie jar, ashamed but mostly afraid of losing the comfort she'd taken for granted. "I didn't think it would come out like this," she added, as if it had just slipped out in casual conversation and not dropped like a bomb in the center of the dinner table. "You're living in your car?" Catherine asked, her voice high and thin, a note of panic bleeding through. "What about the job? The business launch? The coaching thing?" "I never got it off the ground," Kayla muttered, unable to meet her gaze. "I tried, but it just didn't happen." Catherine turned to me then, slowly, like someone who'd just realized the bridge they were standing on was already burning. Her expression softened, shifting gears from anger to something else, something almost pitiful. She opened her mouth, and what came out was a lie dressed up in desperation. "I didn't mean what I said earlier," she whispered. "You know that, right, Lena? I was just trying to make Kayla feel good. It was a joke. A silly comment. I wasn't serious." It would have been laughable if it hadn't been so insulting. After everything, she was still trying to rewrite the moment, gaslight me into doubting the pain I'd carried in my chest since childhood like a rusted anchor. But I didn't scream. I didn't break anything or run out of the room. I just stood there and told the truth, not the kind you say to win an argument, but the kind you've buried for years because it hurts too much to say out loud. You spent 40 years making me feel like a mistake, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. So I stopped trying to be your daughter. I became your landlord instead. The words landed with a thud that seemed to echo around the room. Catherine's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She blinked at me, stunned, as if I'd slapped her even though I hadn't raised a hand. And Kayla, sweet, irresponsible, forever forgiven Kayla, just stared down at her empty plate, probably wondering where she'd sleep that night and if Mom would still pick her, even now. I walked away after that. I didn't wait for applause or rebuttal. I didn't linger for hugs or tears or any of the things people think should come after a moment like that. I just picked up my coat, nodded once at the stunned guests, and stepped out into the cold evening air where the sky was bruised purple and the moon hung low like a witness that had seen too much. Later that week, I sat in my car outside the house while movers shuffled in and out of the front door, carrying boxes and bags and bits of a life that never really belonged to me. I watched them pack up her china cabinet, her floral curtains, the ugly rooster painting she hung in the kitchen because she claimed it gave the house character. It was all leaving, and for the first time, I realized how little of it actually meant anything. These weren't heirlooms, they were just props in a play that had ended years ago. On the passenger seat beside me was a framed photo from 1989, taken at the community park near our old elementary school. I was in the corner of the frame, arms crossed, face serious, while Kayla stood front and center with a popsicle in one hand and Mom's arm wrapped around her shoulder like a trophy. I stared at it for a long time, trying to remember if I'd ever felt part of that moment or if I had always been on the outside looking in, even then. I don't know if I feel better. I don't know if I ever will. The truth doesn't always heal. It just stops the bleeding. Maybe that's enough. But for once, she saw me. And maybe that's all I ever wanted.